Hello, I'm Amy Davison from Gallery 1, and I'm going to be teaching you how to make the stitched felt succulent kit. Let's go over first what we have in our kit. In your little llama bag, like this, you will have the little basket form that we will be weaving the yarn on. You will have a ball of yarn. They came in a few different colors. This one is a variegated that will be red to pink to purple. Some of your kits might have yellow, green, orange, or blue, red, orange. It was all from one roll, so they'll be a little bit different. I'll also tell you about how you can splice your own if you have a different color that you want to use for your home. You will have some different shades of felt. You will have a dark green one that is kind of a rectangular shape, and then you will have these longer ones that we'll be cutting into longer strips to make the little tiny succulents. You will also have some barbecue skewers that have been cut down. You may choose to cut these a little bit shorter too, and I will tell you how to do that safely without ruining your scissors. You have some crochet thread on a little paper here, and we'll talk about how much you need approximately for each step of the process. You have a little cup that has a needle threader, some little squares in coral and purple to make the little blossoms, little pom-poms, little tiny cute ones, and needles. You also have a bag with cotton batting for stuffing your cactus, little paper shreds in brown that will be the soil in your pot, and some templates. So this template is going to be the one for the felt succulents. You can either cut these out and pin them to your felt, or you can just use these as a guide, a visual guide, and then trace them on with chalk or even a Sharpie if you don't mind a little bit showing if you cut a little crooked. So you can either cut this apart or just glance at it to use it for forms. There is a coloring sheet I added in there that will show you the various shapes of cactuses and succulents. So if you don't like the shape that I provided, you're welcome to cut out your own shape using this as a style guide. And here is our other set of patterns. Again, if you want to make your own size or your own shape of cactus, you don't have to use this, but you are more than welcome to please cut this out and use this as your guide. We have a little round cactus, we have the taller type, and there is a little tiny flower also for the blossom on top of your cactus should you choose to add one. Okay, so let's get started by showing how to weave the basket. Tuck this off the side. Oh, wait, first let me go back and say there are two items that I did not include in your kit you might find useful. If you have some sewing pins, this will help you pin your pattern into place. And a pair of scissors that are good for cutting felt. Felt can be tricky to cut, so using a good sharp pair is gonna save you a lot of frustration. Okay, so now let's go and see the shot with my hands. We'll change that over, and I will show you how to get started on the basket. So first things first, we need to tie a knot. Just a loop and tuck it through. And then I pick one of my little spikes here and I pull it tight. Then I'm going to make another little tuck and poke this through and pull it tight. So there you go. There's our little knot securing it into place. It's really hard finding my camera. Here we go. You can see the knot in there. I'm going to keep it nice and tidy And because I tied that securely, I'm going to go ahead and cut this a little bit shorter, so I don't have a big tail on my knot to get in the way. Now, there are a couple different ways you can weave this. You can go in and out, standard like this, and tuck it down, and you'll see the white ribs between every other piece. Or you can loop it from the outside down and a clear round, and you will end up with a very smooth outer texture, like the inside of this basket has a very nice smooth texture inside. Can you see that, everybody? But I chose to do mine where you actually see the ribbing on the outside here, because I like the way this texture is, and I feel like it's something that you often see in cactus themselves. So I want to try and emulate that kind of ribbing in my basket weave. And to do that, I'm going to untangle what I just did, slide my knot all the way down, and you're going to go from the inside front back and around and keep going this way, and this will get your rib to show. I'm actually going to reverse it because I'm right-handed and I'm doing it backwards, which is going to be confusing for us. So I'm going to go like this, tuck it down, go to the front side of the next one, wrap it down and pull it down. And you can see that as I rotate my hands, you get a better direction if you kind of rotate where this hand is holding it. Front side, back side, and down. Front side, back side, down. And as you continue all the way around, you want to kind of push this to the base or to the last row that you did so it stays nice and tidy. Now, because we used a variegated thread, it's going to change colors, and you're going to probably end up with about a third of the space before it changes colors. If you're going to do your own color, you can just stop and splice it by tying a knot either around the plastic rib or to the next piece of yarn that you want to choose to use. That way, if you have a specific color scheme going in your house or your office, you'll be able to match it. So keep going, and when you get to the end, you're just going to tie a tidy little knot. And you can see, let's see, where is my knot? Here's my knot on this one. And because of this kind of yarn and the fact that it's not a piece of clothing that you're going to be wearing, you can just kind of push it down and it stays in place. I did cut it fairly short and it stayed in there nice. Once you have your pot done, that's where we're going to stuff this brown paper shred to be our soil to hold up our cactus. If you feel like yours needs a little more stability, you will be able to put a little bit of the cotton batting below it. But I felt like for the minimal amount of movement mine gets, just the paper shreds held it up. So there's your cactus pot. Let's get into cutting our pattern for our cactus. You can choose to do either of these shapes or create your own. And I gave you a bigger piece of the green fabric that should fit either of these sizes. You could change it out to do one of the brighter greens if you so felt like it. What I recommend doing is not just folding your felt in half like this and having a big wasted space. So I like to kind of fold it and then scoot it over like this so that I have a bigger piece of felt that I could use for something else. This is big enough, you could stitch around this and make a little cute bookmark or something fun. If you have a sewing pin, this is where this would come into place to help you hold your pattern down. You could also alternatively trace it with a white chalk or a dampened white colored pencil, and that will rub off with a little bit of water when you're done cutting it. Pin it into place and cut it out. I've misplaced the ones I had cut out. Hold on just a second here. I had them prepped and I misplaced them. So we're going to cut these real quick. You can see how as I cut, I use this hand to stabilize this and turn it. If you're working with small children, this is a good way to teach them to cut, is this hand doesn't move hardly at all, which is minimal turning while your other hand does the main steering. There you go. You can take your time cutting yours out a little bit longer if you so need to. Remove your pins carefully. And there you go. There's your template for cutting out to stitch on. Next, we need to thread our needle. You're going to take some of the thread that is on this little paper bobbin, and I stretched out about an arm's length, both arm's lengths. So across my chest, so it's about 5 feet from me. You're going to take one of your needles that came in the kit and your needle threader. These are really fun. This little diamond wire will tuck inside of your needle eye. And then you tuck your thread through that much bigger hole and then gently pull. I grip the wire itself so that I'm not putting all the force on where it hooks in, because I don't want it to pull out of my hand. And then you just pull that through. And it is threaded. Much easier, much less frustrating. Now we're going to go down to the end of our thread and tie a knot. So I want my knot to be fairly big because the weave of our felt is looser than like the weave of a regular cotton fabric. So if it's too small of a knot, it's just going to pull through if you have any tugging on there. What I'm going to do is make a loop, and I'm going to tuck my end in 3 times. 1, 2, 3. I pinch up here and I slide it down so that I have as least of a tail as possible. And this knot did not slide as pretty. But if I tug it and work it into place, it'll work. Let's try that again. I'm going to cut the end off here, show you again. I'm going to do a loop, and 1, 2, 3. Hold your tail and let your loop slide in. There we go. Much prettier. I'm going to snip a little bit off the end. I'm going to not worry about getting too close to my knot because I don't want it to fall out. And we're going to be adding little knots of thread to be the spines on our cactus anyways. So it doesn't have to be perfect in that step. So for the sewing on this, we're just going to do a straight stitch. I'm going to start at the back making sure I get both layers of fabric. I'm going to come up and I'm going to make a fairly small stitch, but I like the style of on this where you actually get to see your stitches. So don't pull this super tight to where it hides into the felt. And don't worry about making your stitches so tiny that they're invisible, like you would if you're doing a piece of clothing. We want this to show a little bit of the stitch work. So go from the back, up, and then back down. Felt is very easy to sew on, so this is a great craft to do with children. You can even get a safety needle that will poke through the thread, through the felt if you're working with younger kids. And you just work your way clear around each of these pieces and then tie a knot on this end. Or if you want, you can leave your needle in place, stuff it, and then sew across the end once you have your skewer. Your skewer is going to go right in here after we put the batting in. So that is the start of this. You're going to work your way clear around, and you're going to end up with a cactus like this. And you can see how it has all of these little stitches. Trying to find my camera. There we go. You can see where it has all these little stitches all the way around, and then here's where I put some little knots of thread. Our next step is cutting out a little flower. You can use the template I did, or you can freehand your own little flower in place. And then you're gonna sew the little tiny pom-pom right in the center. You still probably have enough thread on your threaded needle. If not, you can go ahead and add a little bit. I'm gonna tie a knot, again, 1, 2, 3. And this time I'm leaving a larger tail, so I have something to tie when we sew it onto our cactus. I'm going to go from the back side of my flower, centering it in the middle and through. Pull it all the way down to your knot. And then we're going to take our little pom-pom, and you can feel if there's a more solid bit in there. Be careful not to stab through and poke your fingers. But you're trying to find a part where it doesn't just go through and pull out. So there I got a little bit of the solid center. See that? Oh, I know a way that will help. There. You can see the little pom-pom is stabbed through with the needle. Now we're going to pull our little pom-pom. It has been threaded. Ooh, I didn't get much of him and he fell off. Okay, that's why we want to get the center. There we go. So now that I have the center and my flower, we're going to go right next to it. And this part starts being kind of like sewing a button, where you go through, pull your string down, and then, ooh, that was stretchy. Launched it. Now we're going to go from the back side up. We're going to catch a little bit of the pom-pom and go back through, kind of crisscross. We're going to work our way around this a little bit like the division of a pie on back. We're going to kind of do a little crisscrossing here. And picking up from each of the petal centers down to the next petal is going to give our flower a little more of a cupped shape, instead of it being super flat with the little pom-pom stuck in the middle. Be careful that you don't get a loop tangled over your petal. But you can see how now that I've got a few of them in, it's starting to kind of give it a little ruche here. And it's making our flower a little cute. Again, don't stab yourself. And I pull it in. Now on this one, I got a little tuck of one of my stitches, one of my first stitches. I don't like that I can see where that white is, so I'm going to go over to this petal that is across from it. I'm going to pick up and go down under that thread, over and under, and hide it. There is our adorable little cactus blossom. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do it on this one, my other piece of cactus, and then I'll show you what it looks like on the finished one. So because we still have our thread and our needle attached, you're going to be able to pick where you want your blossom to end up. You're going to go through. You can kind of work your way in and only get one layer is what I would choose to do myself. I have one layer of felt. I pulled that up. And then you're going to be able to tie a knot. Make sure you only get that one layer so that you are able to stuff this in our next step. But because I have that tail, we can tie a knot very easily. Tie it once and then tie it again and tug it to where it's in there nice and tight. And you can see how that little knot went in really easy to add our flower blocks.
Amy, I have a question.
Yes.
Would it be better to put the flower on before I finish sewing it? Like, do you think that would be a little like all around the edge, or is it easier? Does it not really matter?
It doesn't really matter. I think that depends on your sewing confidence. If you are someone who has not sewn a lot, go ahead and add your flower first. If you have a little more experience and you can judge the depth of how many layers of felt that you have, go ahead and do that step first. Thank you, Sarah. That was a great question.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks, Amy.
So now that we have our little flower attached to our cactus, I'll show you how to do the cute little spines on it. This is a step now where you are going to go ahead and take what thread you have on your needle. If you need to add more from the spool, there is plenty in there. This time, I want you to go ahead and double up your thread. The other ones, we only had one single strand. This time, we're going to double it so that the ends are even down here, because that's what we're going to want. We're going to want to have 4 little pokies from each knot. Actually, I'm going to go back because Sarah has me thinking this is going to be easier. We're going to stuff this with our cotton batting. Take a little tiny bit in your hands and pull it apart like this so it fluffs. Cotton batting can get kind of matted down and when it's packed or shipped. And so if you fluff it a little bit, you're going to end up with an airier, softer batting that's, I think, way easier to tuck. You're going to go ahead and work a little pinch of it in. And then hopefully you left a big enough spot at the end of your cactus here to poke it in. If not, you might use the end of a pencil. Let me grab one real quick with its eraser. and that will help you get around a tighter corner if your fingers are too short or too thick to fit in there. Take another little bit to fill in this next bulb. And a little more over here. You can see that our cactus is starting to take on a much thicker appearance. A nice plump cactus. Okay. I'm going to keep going a little more. You could do this step after doing little knots for the cactus needles, but if you are not confident that you're not going to get both layers and you're going to sew it shut, stuffing it would save an extra step in there for you if you're not sure that you're judging it right. So there you go. There is the stuffed cactus. Now taking your doubled up threaded needle, you're going to find a spot that you want to add a little set of needles. You could do it all over the entire cactus, and that would be adorable. Or you can choose little clumps of them and do 2 or 3 here and there. You're going to go in and out and pull this all the way down to about here, or however long you need it to be for you to be able to tie a knot. The smaller you leave on this, the more thread you still have, but make sure you leave enough that your fingers are able to tie the knot. I'm gonna loop it around my thumb. Now, because this is not clothing, you could just tie one knot like this and call it good. But you can also go ahead and double it up and tie the second one so it is more secure. Trim your thread, making sure that you leave enough space for this to look like little cactus needles. And then take and pull it open so that they go whichever direction and that they're not just stuck together. Let's do one more right next to it. I like to do a couple individual single ones by themselves, and I like to have clumpings of 2 or 3 because I feel like they create a lot better of a visual balance, just like when you're flower arranging. Go ahead, come in, make a little tiny catch of fabric, pull it through, and then we'll tie our knot. And trim. Go. Now we get to insert our little stick. And if you are going to leave this in a place where this is just going to sit on a shelf or as a table centerpiece, you can leave this open if you so feel like it. If you want it to be a little more finished, you can go ahead and sew across the bottom too. I left mine open so that when it's sitting in the dirt, you have a bigger space here, and I think it looks a little bit nicer. And once I tuck it in the pot, that is what it looks like. All right, let's see if we can get a front view of this real quick. So you can see it head on. This is what it looks like upright. This is pretty cute as it is, but I like having my flower pots a little more densely planted. And same with these little felt ones. So I'm going to show you next how to make the little succulents. All right, back to my hands. You're going to have a long piece of felt in this size. This is enough for you to cut and make multiple succulents that are small ones. Like this is a singular piece of felt, or you can double it up and have a much thicker one. depending on what size you want, I would do a variety of them. Cut your felt into 1 or 2 strips in various textures here. This one we're going to double up so that we have a thicker, shaggy cactus. And to do that, we're going to go back to our threaded needle, if I can find it. There we go. I'm going to pull this down again, where you just have a single thread. I'm going to tie that knot that has the 1, 2, 3 tucks, slide it down, and we're going to connect this with just a couple of quick stitches in the middle. Overlap this by, I don't know, about 2 centimeters, 1/4 of an inch, and just give it a quick little stitch where you go in, out, and out, up. Pull this through, and I want my string to be at the bottom, so I'm just going to repeat that real quick, close to each other. Don't get it tangled in any of the little fringes. And this would work for any of the shapes that you're doing, the zigzags, the more of the petal shaped scallop, or this little fringy guy. You can do deep cuts of the fringe, but just don't cut all the way through to where you cut into clear through. If you do accidentally cut clear through, just do this method and stitch it back together. I'm going to quickly show you a couple of other shapes because I jumped ahead of myself. There's also this zigzag, which when rolled makes kind of a hen and chicken shaped succulent. Or there's this one that has more of a petal shape. This one is harder to cut, but it makes a very pretty succulent. This one is easier to cut, and the bonus to this one is when you cut your strip in half, you actually have enough to either do 2 succulents or 1 longer one. So you can see that this is about 2 inches or 1.5 inches, and I cut zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. I freehanded it. You can trace it on, you could draw it on, whatever you're more comfortable and confident in. Going back to our fringe one, our purple fringe, we are going to take one of our barbecue skewers. Now I left these kind of long because I wasn't quite sure what the depth needed to be. I found in cutting them, for the cactuses I left them long, and for the succulents I'm liking them in about half the length that I cut. So what you're going to do is you could use a pair of wire scissors or garden shears to cut this. If you just have some good utility scissors, don't cut all the way through because you're going to ruin your blade unless they're really good scissors. If you have something like Cutco ones that cut through pennies, then fine, cut through all the way. My Fiskars here, I'm a little more careful with. So I'm just going to squeeze, and with this hand, I'm rotating them. And I'm just kind of scoring it gently. Once you have it scored, you can take your hands, put your thumbs next to it, and it just snaps super duper easy. Okay. So that is what we are going to use, is half the length. For this step, if you are working with children or you are done sewing because you are just tired of it, you could take a little bead of hot glue right here and fold this over like this and then roll it. But this is a stitch succulent. So I'm actually going to rotate this because I'm doing it left-handed again. You're going to rotate this in and then stitch it in place. I have it twisted around so that when I bring my thread through, I am not going to just catch one spot and then get stuck. And we need to tie a knot because I cut that one off. So here is our knot again. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Wrap this around where the stick is nice and fully covered. And coming from this back side, we are going to tuck through and make sure that you get all of those layers of fabric, of felt. Come through. I'm going to go around here, and I can feel that my needle is really close to the wood skewer so that I'm getting every bit. And we're going to make a few stitches going up and around this way, pulling it secure so that it holds in place and doesn't let it slip. Okay, I have 4 stitches. I'm going to do a 5th and then work my way back down the stick. If you are an avid sewer and you have other colors of thread at home, you could change this to be a color that you that wouldn't show. But this is going to be rolled inside anyways. So I have a few stitches going downward. I'm going to leave this thread and needle connect. And we are going to roll our fringed succulent, or whatever shape you are doing, by again rolling your fingers like this around the stick and just guiding with your other hand. And you can untangle this as you go. Use your workspace as your guide to help you turn this and rotate it. Make sure your fringes stay up, and then we'll fluff them at the end. And there we go. It's like a cinnamon roll of felt. To secure this in place, if you're using hot glue, you can just pile a bunch of glue in here. Careful to let it cool so that you don't hurt yourself with it. But because we're stitching this one, I'll show you that. We're going to go from this edge where we have our final ending point, and I'm going to tuck it through, and I'm going to work on picking up as many of the little layers here as I possibly can. Don't sweat it if you miss 1 or 2 because we're going to make a few passes. And because this is a little thicker, my fingers are slipping. What happens when you put lotion on right before you sew? Don't let your fringe get tangled. Pull it through and pull it. Now I'm going to go over a little tiny bit, and we're going to work our way around it kind of like you would slice a pie, or the numbers on a clock, and we're going to go over just a little bit from our first stitch and work it through. You will see a few of your stitches if you are using the white, but this will be tucked down by the fringy potting soil, the paper shred, so it won't show when you pot your succulent. Pull it through. Rotate over one, wiggle your way through, and pull it. Now for this process, you're just going to keep going and making a bunch of succulents until you feel like your pot is full enough. Got a little bit of a tangle here. Just going to undo that one layer. There we go. And you might be happy with 1, you might like 2, or you might make a whole bunch. whichever you prefer. Varying the size, some big, some small, would look really nice. And here's a step I could have done. I could have left my tail longer and just tied off on my tail, but I wasn't planning ahead. I was caught up on the video mode. So because I don't have enough of a tail, I'm just going to make a little tuck of fabric, of felt. I'm going to start to pull my loop, but not pull it all the way shut. I'm going to take my needle, one loop, and one loop, two loops, and then pull that through like this. And you can see as it starts to pull in, it guides those loops together. It'll make a nice knot. Let's show you one more time. Just a teeny tuck of felt. Leave a loop and go 1 and 2. Let's If you have tiny embroidery scissors, that might be less clunky than using your big shears for this step. Okay. And then fluff it with your fingers, open it up. The other style, you're going to gently peel them back. I'll show you a little bit on this one. So this style of succulent, you're just going to open the petals a little more like you would a rose that's a little tight, and fluff that more open. Good. If your dowel is showing, you can either push that in to where it's less visible, or you could take a little bit of a Sharpie or marker and cover that up. All right, let's see our final projects in a frontward view. So here is our fun little succulent, stitch succulent. There are variations you could easily do to this. There's a cute succulent called a zebra one, and it has little white lines on it. If you have a free afternoon, you could make little straight stitches all over a piece of felt like this. And when you roll it, there'd be a lot of cute detail on it. You could also stitch up and around the zigzag before you roll it in a contrasting color like purple or red or pink on the greens, or a bright green on the purple would be lovely. You can also take, I have a little one here, and this one has a little bit of chalk pastel brushed on it to try and make it have a little bit of color difference on it as well. Those are all variations you can do to add a little bit of personalization to your felt succulents. I hope that you guys had a fun time today. I know I sure did. Thank you for joining me, Amy Davison, with Gallery 1 for our Felt Succulent Art2GO kit. Have a wonderful day and keep creating. Bye.